Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you listening right now. Thank you so much, Mark Gibson, Reed Fischler, Larry Bailey, and brand new patron, ORLY. Oh, really? Oh, it's good to have you.
I think really. Yay.
Yeah, definitely really. On this episode of DTNS, yes, Google has been deemed a monopoly. We'll explain why it won't be until 2029 or so that anything is done about it. Plus, Uber tries to beat Tesla in the autonomous car game, and Google, monopoly or not, is giving Apple TV a run for its money. This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, August 6th, 2024. I'm in Los Angeles, and I am also Tom Merritt.
I am also in Los Angeles at Studio Animal House. They're both sleeping, and I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm just around, but I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
When Roger
You're
sleeps
omnipresent.
around the house, he sleeps in a lot of different places, you know?
Yeah.
I'm glad you finished that sentence.
Yeah. Because he's not a large person. He's a normal-sized person. All right. Let's start with the quick hits, shall we?
404 Media reports that NVIDIA instructed employees to download videos from YouTube, Netflix, and other providers for use in training its generative models like Omniverse 3D. YouTube, owned by Google, reiterated its stance to Engadget that it would consider such use of its content a violation of its own terms of service. NVIDIA believes it is within copyright law.
One of the many OpenAI co-founders, John Schulman, has decided to leave OpenAI and take a job at its direct competitor, Anthropic, in order to, quote, deepen my focus on AI alignment and to start a new chapter of my career where I can return to hands-on technical work. Schulman was a member of OpenAI's newly formed safety and security team. He won't be anymore. Meanwhile, OpenAI president and co-founder Greg Brockman has announced a leave of absence for the rest of the year. And on top of that, a product leader, Peter Deng, is also leaving. So the information is like, they come in threes. Meanwhile, OpenAI announced that its upcoming Dev Day conference won't be a one-day big shindig like it was last year. Instead, it will be a series of smaller sessions, one in San Francisco on October 1st, one in London on October 30th, and one in Singapore on November 21st. OpenAI also said it will not announce its next model during Dev Days this year.
A lot of people leaving OpenAI, at least at high-up positions.
Yeah.
Apple released the macOS Sequoia Beta 5 for developers, which includes Safari's distraction control. This is a feature that lets you click on things that are distracting elements on a web page, like ads or pop-ups or sign-in prompts, and it will hide them. It's supposed to anyway. It doesn't hide content by default, but content that you select to be hidden will stay hidden on subsequent page loads. But ads will reappear as they are frequently different than the last time you loaded that page.
Switzerland's Terra Quantum has signed a contract with the U.S. Air Force to study post-quantum cryptography, quantum key distribution, and quantum random number generators. The aim of this study is to develop a network that would secure communications in the face of more powerful quantum computer cracking abilities.
Google announced the launch of Nest Learning Thermostat 4. It has a thinner design, 60% larger display, no bezel, and the option for 4 different faces. It also uses Gemini to improve its learning. $280 includes 1 sensor to place in another part of your home as well. You can buy more sensors for $40 a pop or 3 for $99. So you can, save a little bit if you need a few.
Yeah.
You can pre-order now and they'll arrive on August 20th, start arriving anyway. Google also announced it will bring Gemini to power Google Assistant on Nest speakers and displays to everyone next year, 2025.
Yeah, the Pixel announcement's next week, folks. So all the not Pixel stuff is apparently being announced now. In fact, there's one more. Stay tuned.
So ahead of its Made by Google event, which is next Tuesday, a week from today, Google announced the expected Google TV streamer, which replaces the 11-year-old Chromecast. But it's different. This is a set-top box. It's $100, and it's very much designed to be seen, not hidden away, when it ships on September 24th. It has some cool new features. These features feel a lot more Apple TV than they do Chromecast. So USB charger, USB-C charger, gigabit Ethernet jack, support for HDMI 2.1a, although it doesn't include an HDMI cable, so you're going to have one laying around or get one. Wi-Fi 5, Bluetooth 5.1 support as well. Google says the processor, 22% faster than the Chromecast, double the RAM, 32 gigs of storage. It's also a Thread border router, has Matter connectivity support as well. So this is designed to very much power a smart home, be a hub for the smart home. There's a new remote finder button. So if you're someone like me and your remotes end up at the bottom of your couch or somewhere weird, there's a little button on the back of the streamer itself. Press it, the remote will beep. Hopefully you can find it. Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos support as well. And then there's some Gemini stuff. Nothing too crazy, but you're going to get things like summaries and reviews, season by season breakdowns of content if you're browsing within the interface. You can also create generative AI screensavers to use as your, when your device goes into sleep mode. You can also use your own photos from your Google Photos album. So there's a lot of stuff here. However, the latest version of the Chromecast, $30, and this goes up to $100. So we are not in the same device category at this point, and I wonder how much that's going to, keep away people who loved the Chromecast because it was cheap and worked well.
Yeah, I want to before we get to talking about the streamer itself, because I think it's interesting on its own. Little, RIP for the Chromecast. I am surprised that Google isn't keeping one model of the dongle around. We have the Fire TV dongle still out there. We have the Roku sticks still out there, and there's a lot of third parties that rebrand these dongles. I feel like the little stick that you just stick in the back of your TV isn't gone. It's not like a failed form factor. So it's interesting to me that Google said, you know what, we're going to play in the higher end of the market. Apple doesn't make a dongle. Well, guess what? We're not going to make a dongle either, which kind of goes with my next point, Sarah, which is that this thing sure does seem like it is positioned to compete with the Apple TV 4K.
Yeah. For those who are like, well, I like the Chromecast and this is a nice device, but I just don't need it. I'll stick with the sort of stripped down version that's cheaper and hides behind my TV. Chromecast with Google TV 4K and HD still on sale. But the company says when they run out, that's it. Will not be restocked. Existing units still going to get updates, including home runtime, which is designed to turn a Chromecast into a hub for Matter devices. That's something that Google promised at I/O earlier this year. That is expected later this year, the update is. But yeah, I mean, July 2013 is when Chromecast came on the scene. And, I remember that. I remember people being like, oh, this is awesome. At the time, you had smart TVs, but not the way you have them now. I use a smart TV interface with an LG TV that I bought earlier this year. LGV, not a brand yet, but it runs WebOS and everything is internal. I don't even use an Apple TV. I use an Apple TV on an old TV that I now have in my bedroom. It's fine. I really feel no huge need to get a set-top box. But I like the look of it. I like the look of the Google TV streamer. It's very, it comes in white and sort of like a medium gray, like a slate gray, a light slate gray. And I do happen to have a media center top under my TV where it could go nicely. It really depends on your setup because everybody does things differently, so you got to put it somewhere. But it's cool. I like the idea of Google going a little farther into something that's mostly for entertainment and streaming, but also something that is your home hub, which, TVs are increasingly where a lot of people like to have their home hub to look at and take care of everything.
Yeah, and that is a trend. Amazon's doing that. Apple's doing that as well in turning that set-top box into something that does a little more. Nick with a C says, I mean, you could sticky pad this thing behind your TV if you really just want that Chromecast feel where it's out of sight. One of the things Google said was that you get better reception putting this in front of your TV instead of having it stuck behind. I don't know that makes much of a difference. Interesting to me that this is Wi-Fi 5 if it's meant to have better reception, not Wi-Fi 6 or 7, but nonetheless, I think I think you're right. I think it is a good looking, well designed. We want to look better than Apple competitor. It does 4K. It's got Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, Matter, all the things, right? And to me, that's Google stepping it up and saying, yeah, the sticks are for people who make cheap stuff. Amazon sells theirs for $20 or less. Roku sells theirs for a tiny bit. On sells theirs for a tiny bit. We're not playing in that market anymore. I don't think it means that people are not using those sticks, because yes, smart TV operating system interfaces have gotten better, but people still keep TVs for a long time, and those TVs tend to feel slow over time. One really interesting question was from Jesse in our YouTube channel. I wonder what this means for TVs with Google TV built in. I don't think it means that Google will stop wanting to market either Android TV or Google TV to TV makers any more than Roku is not. Roku is still marketing the Roku OS to TV makers as well as selling Roku boxes. In some ways, the future is to sell the operating system to the TV maker and not sell these devices. So I suppose you could be surprised that they're even wanting to make a set-top box device at all, but especially a more expensive one. But yeah, I think it with the caveat that Google does like to kill stuff, which I think Stoke Squirrel was mentioning in chat earlier too. It does. I don't think it means that you see anything happen specifically to Google TV that is built into TVs. It's just another option for folks.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Google's like, let's just get you to use one of the many options.
Yeah, we just want to give you whatever you need. We're there for you in some way.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about autonomous cars. Uber had their earnings report, and they were good. We'll touch on that, but they talked a lot about autonomous cars. Tesla has been testing its autonomous taxi service in Shanghai. You don't hear a lot about that, but they have been doing that for a couple months now. Tesla, more famously, has been delaying its big announcement of its robo-taxi, now expected to happen in October. But it looks like it might happen now because Uber is positioning itself against a future Tesla robo-taxi service. Uber does not develop its own cars. It is contracting with multiple companies like Waymo and China's BYD to get the autonomous cars and then put them on the Uber platform so that you can hail them and they can carry you around. Uber says the number of trips from its autonomous vehicles is 6 times what it was last year. It does not say what that number was last year. So if it was 1 last year, it's now 6. If it was 1,000 last year, it's 6,000. Kind of makes a difference. But that number also counts shipments in partnership with companies like Wabi and Aurora. So freight trucking counts in this, not just passengers. Uber also partners with Serve Robotics and Cartken. Those are those little like trolleys you see on the sidewalk to deliver Uber Eats. Those count in this number as well. So Uber is trying to goose its number up and make itself look good in advance of Tesla. And Uber had a good earnings report. Bookings were up 19%. It had record operating profits. Uber says it will announce more details on its autonomous vehicle plans in the coming months. So, Sarah, it looks like Uber thinks the autonomous vehicle market is coming, and it looks like it thinks the autonomous vehicle market is a platform market, and it knows that Tesla wants to do this as well. In fact, Tesla is saying, we want to do it like Airbnb. If you own a Tesla that can do autonomous vehicles, you can let it carry passengers when you're not using it and make some money. And Uber says, we're a better option than Tesla because we'll have more cars on the road and we have human drivers and a whole platform.
Yeah, I mean, what Uber's got going for it is that people already know what Uber is used for. It used to be, I want to, get a ride to the airport. Still is that, but also I would like food delivered to me. I need to, send Eileen an Apple Vision Pro. I don't know if I would still
risky, but you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, I mean, that is, it used to be way back in the day, it used to be that an Uber driver was not supposed to send anything from point A to point B that did not have a passenger involved. But depending on the driver, you could ask nicely and they'd be like, all right, yeah, okay, just don't tell anybody type thing. Well, we're in a different era. The Uber system is we take things places. Sometimes those things are humans. In fact, if you're watching any Olympics coverage, you've probably seen that Uber commercial where like the little kid gets a teddy bear delivered to her because she's like freaking out because she needs her teddy bear. It's actually a cute commercial. Beatles song in it. But I think that that's where Uber has to convince people less, because autonomous vehicles that can be part of that system, especially in places where, there aren't a lot of Uber drivers, or, you get the 6 p.m. crush where it's like there are a lot of Uber drivers, but it's really hard to get one, or, just there are a lot of different regional aspects to take into this. On the Tesla side, I can see where a person who has a Tesla, for example, one of my immediate neighbors has a Tesla. They work from home. That thing is never driven. I mean, it really just sits there. I mean, they kind of drive it every once in a while, but mostly it just sits there. And it's like, that's perfect. I mean, if you're comfortable with that, you could rake in some cash by, making your personal vehicle an AV sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like the takeaway here is that we see at least two companies, and Waymo is part of this. They have their own platform. You can actually use it in Los Angeles and Phoenix and a couple other places.
I did recently. Worked great.
Yeah, we are getting a platform war is what I'm trying to say. And Waymo may be the platform, or they may be just doing a platform to show that their stuff works. And they may want to give their cars to Uber, Lyft, and others, Grab Taxi, et cetera, around the world. But this is happening. Apparently in Shanghai, it's happening in a lot of ways. Baidu has their taxis going there. Obviously, I mentioned Tesla doing theirs. The interesting thing is those taxis, The Economist just had a report on this, can't always go where you are. So it works kind of like a bus stop. Like you have to walk to the pickup area. You can't just say like you can with an Uber, come get me here. And in fact, Waymo works that way. In most places, you can say, come get me here. And within reason, it'll come get you. Apparently, a lot of the ones in China are like, no, I can't get you there. You have to meet me over here. So it's varying levels of sophistication, but we may be finally to that, 5 years we'll have autonomous cars being true. Maybe in 5 years we will have autonomous cars in a lot more places.
Yeah.
At least Uber seems to think so.
In my one experience, and this was just a Waymo car, and I didn't go that far, but I just wanted to try it out. It was there's a slight learning curve because it knew my address and it said, all right, I'll pick you up there, and then the car actually passed me and turned, and I was like, oh, I guess it's like a different car, or like not meant for me, or it messed up. But no, it was just going to what it deemed the safest place that was about half a block and across the street from me. So super close. But, I'm just used to, the Uber driver being literally right at my address, maybe even honking or calling me on the phone. And the same thing when the Waymo dropped me off. I asked it to take me to a restaurant, and instead of taking me to the front of the restaurant, which is on a busy street, it took me to the nearest corner where it felt like it was safer, which it was actually. So, they're getting smarter.
Yeah. And Uber seems to think it's worth convincing at least its investors that it's going to be a player in it, which means it thinks that people are going to consider this important to be a player in, which means it thinks that it's got buzz and reality, and maybe it does. Speaking of reality, the reality is David Michael doesn't have a lot of space for all the DTNS stuff we've built up in the store over the years, so we're cleaning it out. If you would like a DTNS mouse pad, they are quite lovely, or maybe a DTNS mug with the album art on it. The mouse pads are down to $2. $2 for this. And DTNS mugs are down to $5. These are temporary prices. We're just trying to clear some stuff out, make some room in Dave's barn. So go get them while they last at dailytechnewsshow.com/store. Yesterday, right before the show, Monday, Judge Amit Mehta of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ruled that Google had abused its monopoly position in two areas: general search services and the market for general text advertising. I will try to clear up what that actually means in a minute. But the short version is that Judge Mehta said Google had gained an 89.2% share of the market in the smallest way of measuring it, by striking exclusive search deals with Apple, Samsung, Mozilla, and of course, its own Android in general. These deals set off a cycle where Google could charge more for advertising than other platforms and not worry about being undercut. It could then take that money and pay more for its distribution deals than anyone else, thus maintaining its dominant share and the ability to keep elevating its ad revenues. Among Judge Mehta's observations in the opinion, in 2020, Google conducted a quality degradation study which showed that it would not lose search revenue if it were to significantly reduce the quality of its search product. We're not saying it did that or not. Leave that up to you. But the judge was saying Google did a study and found we don't have to keep making search good and we won't lose revenue. That is an indication of a monopoly. Google also does not consider rivals' prices when setting its ad rates. Meta wrote, Google, in fact, has profitably raised prices substantially above the competitive level. That makes the existence of monopoly power clear. So what he's saying is it is dominating the search market and it is using exclusive distribution deals to allow it to dominate the text advertising market in search. We'll get to the distinction, but specifically text ads that show up at the top of search. So he has determined Google is a monopoly in those two areas. What happens next? Well, now we have more court case. We have arguments over what the remedy should be. So he's determined they're a monopoly. Now the Department of Justice and Google get to argue, well, the remedy should be this. The Department of Justice is going to argue for a breakup. Maybe spin out search as a separate company. Maybe it should be forced to spin out Chrome or Android. Maybe all of that. Maybe something else. A lot of experts feel that the judge is more likely to order Google to be prohibited from paying for distribution deals. So maybe not a full breakup, but saying you can't pay Apple, Samsung, and Mozilla. You can't require people who use Android to use search. And that would cut off a revenue option for Apple, Samsung, and Mozilla. Now, granted, they could charge others to be default search. This wouldn't prohibit them from conducting business. It would prohibit Google from accepting such a deal. There's also the idea of Google opening an API that's been floated around by some experts, saying they could let other companies use the search algorithm from Google to build their own competing products. Whatever happens, Google said they will appeal. So first we get the arguments. That takes a couple months. Then we get the remedy, and then Google can appeal, and they will likely be able to get an appeal. They will likely be able to get an injunction that says they don't have to do any of this until the appeals process is finished. And the appeals process won't be done for as many as 5 years. So, Sarah, it might be 2029 before we even know whether Google is going to get punished or not, and what that punishment might be.
Yeah, so short version, nothing's changing anytime soon, but the issues for Google remain, and they've been going on for quite a while. Okay, so here's my first question, because it confused me a little bit when you and Justin were talking about this briefly yesterday. I knew we were going to talk about this in more length today. The court, the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, its ruling on Monday, did not find that Google had a monopoly in search ads, but doesn't, from everything I'm reading today, isn't that what this is about, at least in part? Yeah.
So there are some definitions being deployed in the opinion that are kind of confusing if you just look at the terms. There's a graphic in the opinion that kind of helps make it make more sense. Search advertising is a market. And the judge said that Google does not have a monopoly in search advertising. And you may say, well, wait, but he did say they have a monopoly in search advertising. Search advertising is defined in this court case as any kind of search anywhere. So if I search on Amazon and there's advertising, if I search in the Apple App Store and there's advertising, if I search on Facebook and there's advertising, that is a market, the market for I'm searching for something and advertising shows up. Google does not have a monopoly on that market because it doesn't control the advertising in Apple, on Amazon, Facebook, and a lot of other places, right? So that's why they say there is no monopoly in search advertising, but search advertising is a legitimate market. That's a side note. When you're doing monopoly cases, the first thing you have to show is there a market that can be monopolized, right? So that's why it's important for them to say, yes, there is a search advertising market that could be monopolized. Google doesn't monopolize it. Then there's the second one, general search advertising. This is horribly named, but this is saying...
Add general to it and okay.
Anytime.
Yeah, how's it different?
Yeah. How is this less like a smaller category than search advertising? But anytime there is search related to finding a specific thing is kind of my understanding. And so this narrows it down to be like, it's not any kind of search. It's not an app store search. It's I'm typing in text and I get a list of responses. And there is advertising. It could be display advertising, could be text advertising. There's all kinds of examples of it. Again, Amazon would be a good example of general search advertising, right? I type in keywords, search is returned, and there's a couple sponsored results. That is not a market. That is not a separate market from search advertising. So when you're like, that's confusing, that's why, because it's not actually a market. The judge said the Department of Justice tried to claim that this was a separate market, and it's not. This is just a smaller part of search advertising. Search advertising is the market here, not general search advertising.
It's like explaining the market more specifically, but the market is still just the one market.
The Department of Justice was trying to get an extra charge here, and they failed. But they did convince the judge that search text advertising, so the ability for a text link in a list of search results to come up at the top as sponsored, was in fact a marketplace. So specific to, I am searching the internet and a text ad comes up at the top. That is a sub-market. He said, yes, that is a distinct market from display ads and shopping ads and all these other things. And Google does monopolize that. That is the one they were found to be a monopoly of because while Bing has the same thing, Bing barely has any market share. DuckDuckGo has the same thing. DuckDuckGo barely has any market share. So the text ads that come up at the top of search results are a marketplace, the subset of the marketplace that is distinct, and Google monopolizes it. So that's why they were found to be a monopoly of general search text advertising, but not a monopoly of search advertising, if that makes sense.
I mean, I gotta say, after the explanation, I understand why the judge ruled the way that the judge ruled. But it's pretty convoluted to just sort of skim this information and be like, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I guess knowing that this is going to drag on for, let's call it 5 years, if not longer.
Yeah.
I think to myself, all right, well, what's the most logical part of Google to be spun out into an independent company? That is, I know what I would say. Today I would say probably Android. But is that going to be the case in 5 years?
Probably not, right? Like, remember, in 1999, Microsoft was ordered to break up. They appealed. They got the breakup order overturned. They ended up just having to offer a choice for some things instead of having to break up. And by the time 2004 rolled around and the last of their cases was settled, Windows dominance really wasn't as big of an issue as it once had been. Like the punishment came too late and was too small. I have a feeling that might happen here. By the time 2029 rolls around, if it does take that long to work through the appeals process, we may be saying like, yeah, nobody really uses Google for search anymore. It's all OpenAI and Anthropic now or something else, right? So
TikTok,
it's not that. Yeah, right. TikTok. Maybe searches? People just they only use Reddit for search. Nobody even uses. So it's not like that now. But it could be more like that in 5 years. And that tends to be what happens in a lot of these antitrust cases is the process takes so long that by the time the remedy is put in place, the problem has kind of resolved itself some other way.
Now it falls on some other company that's not.
Yeah. And not that it won't have impact. CR Poll points out that Microsoft had to set up a compliance office and it had to do a lot of stuff. And arguably there was some good effects that came from it, but it wasn't nearly as dramatic as breaking them up would have been. And the problem wasn't as intense as it was when the process started in 1999. All right, let's check out the mailbag.
All right. For all you people thinking about doing some summer travel, we've got another couple months, at least heat-wise. Chris Christensen says, if you're planning to make heavy use of that smartphone on your summer vacation or a vacation you have coming up, he's got some tips to keep it running longer between charges.
This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler with another Tech in Travel Minute. Recently on the show, you talked about bringing different gadgets along on trips and also dealing with things like low batteries on your cell phone, which you're using for navigation, listening to your podcasts, and of course, also taking all your pictures. A couple of things to add to that. One is if you're traveling in the summer, especially this summer, which has been particularly hot, your battery life will be even worse. Some things to do. One is, yes, carry an extra battery. I have one that's a MagSafe battery that I carry, but also you can go into low power mode first thing in the day. If you know you're going to be in those sort of conditions, turning off background refresh for as many apps as you can, leaving the phone in airplane mode when you're out in the boonies and it can't connect anyway, and turning off location services or setting them for while using the app. It's no fun finding out your phone is dead when you go to take a picture. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
Thank you, Chris. Good tips as always, especially when it comes to batteries. Seems like a never-ending fight. All right, patrons, stick around for the extended show, Good Day Internet. You may have heard the news that Ziff Davis just bought CNET, and maybe some of you said, well, wait a minute, didn't CNET once buy Ziff Davis? Yes, it's all true. Ziff Davis did just buy CNET, and CNET once did buy Ziff Davis. We will explain what that means, and as a former CNET employer or employee, talk a little bit about what we think about it. Stick around, patrons, for that.
And you thought Google ad search was hard to explain. Just a reminder, you can catch our show. We are live Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern. That is 2000 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Always good to have you live if you can join us. And we'll be back doing it all again tomorrow with Scott Johnson joining us. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.